What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with the Wave Report number 19. All right. Before we get started, oh yeah, by the way, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button as well if you like the content, and excuse me, share the video on your social media platforms. Um, the fights this weekend. First, Oscar Valdez against Emmanuel Navarrete. That's going to be for the WBO Super Featherweight title. I already did the breakdown for that. I'm probably going to release it later on today, so be on the lookout for that. And also, we have Anthony Joshua against whoever. All right, they're still looking for a replacement for this Saturday, being that Dillian White tested positive for some kind of banned substance, and still don't know what it is. So Joshua, according to Michael Benson, there's talks of him fighting Gerald Washington, which is one of the names that I brought up because of the styles. Big tall guy with good 1-2. I think that would be someone good preparation for Deontay Wilder, someone realistic. But now also we're hearing that Robert Helenius, who is Deontay Wilder's last opponent, may possibly be an opponent for Anthony Joshua as well. All right, I think that is a little better of an opponent than Gerald Washington, in my opinion. Even though I know Wilder knocked him out quickly, Robert Helenius was the guy that was able to expose and destroy Adam Kownacki when he was undefeated. You know what I mean? And Helenius has been in there and has performed better against higher levels than Gerald Washington, in my opinion. But both of them are solid and more realistic replacement opponents than some of the top tier fighters we've heard or fans have demanded that they wanted. The reason why I don't think Andy Ruiz is realistic is because that is a fight that you would obviously prepare for, being that he's already stopped you before. That's not a fight as a 1 week kind of replacement opponent for Anthony Joshua, especially if they already have plans of fighting Deontay Wilder this Saturday. All right, so I'm cool with either or, you know what I mean? And listen, it is what it is. I wasn't really excited for the Dillian White fight anyway, and now that he's tested positive for the third time in his career, I'm really not excited for it because it just goes to show that there's not much confidence with him or his team that he would have won the fight. All right, so it is what it is. All right, so Oscar Valdez against Navarrete is going to be later on that evening on ESPN Plus, and Anthony Joshua against whoever will be on the Zone. And I plan on covering both fights. All right, so let's get into it's going to be a short video, not much new to cover this week, but there's talks of David Benavidez and Demetrius Andrade almost being secured. All right, I really like this fight. This would be Andrade's toughest fight in his entire career, in my opinion. And I think this will be Benavidez. You can make an argument whether it's Plant or Andrade or whatever. You could go wherever way you want to go with that. But this is a top tier super middleweight fight. It's time for Andrade to finally show what he's really capable of, because he's going to need to be at his best that night, and Benavidez as well. For the people that are non-believers of both fighters, it's time for one of them to show up. And the winner of this can possibly be, and being that they're both with the PBC, they can possibly be the next opponent for Canelo Alvarez if Canelo is to go through Jermell Charlo. All right, so I love this matchup. I think I've told you guys in other videos before with this 3-fight deal with Canelo that I'm cool with Canelo fight either one of these guys or David Morrell. You know what I mean? Canelo is fighting Jermell first, but I was talking more of that second or third fight, in that 3-fight deal. All right, so I love this fight. I think when it comes to I'm always like this when it comes to any division, including 147, where a lot of us are talking about it right now. I love when two of the top ranked fighters in their what's it called, whatever sanctioning body they're in, fight each other before getting the champion, especially when the champion is undisputed. That goes for Boots Ennis, Keith Thurman, Stanionis, all of those guys. I like Virgil Ortiz, when he was there, I wanted Virgil. I kept saying, give me Ortiz against Boots Ennis before they get a title fight, or make them fight for a vacant title or something. Do not give me one of those before, they fight each other, or they fight someone at that level, at that top tier level, because it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be bad to watch Boots fight Bud right now. You know what I mean? But it would be a large gap in between talent from who's Boots been facing up to this point to fighting Terrence Bud Crawford. And if Crawford, obviously if Boots won the fight, it'll be a crazy win. It'll be a crazy win. But if Boots loses the fight, it's going to be like, oh, it was too soon. He was too inexperienced, all that stuff. I don't want to hear any of that. You know what I mean? So I love this fight. Andrade and Benavidez has been around for a while. Benavidez is a lot younger, but he's been fighting as a pro since he was extremely young. And Andrade he's been around for a long time. You know what I mean? And for the most part, he has not fought anyone that I wanted him to fight. Going down the names, I wanted him to fight Lara. I wanted him to fight one of the Charlo twins. I wanted him to fight Canelo and Saunders, and some of these fights are not his fault. But there are fights where they are his fault. You know what I mean? So I wanted him to step up, not just pick up a strap, but step up and fight someone that would be considered dangerous. And this will be his first really dangerous opponent in a long time. I don't even know who would be the favorite going in this fight. You know what I mean? I would actually expect Benavidez to be a slight favorite to win this one. You know what I mean? So I love this fight. I really hope it goes down and makes a lot of sense. And whoever wins this fight should be getting Canelo next. Obviously Benavidez would be a bigger fight because, it'll be a Mexican holiday and they could fight each other in May. That would be great. But I think the winner of this fight definitely gets Canelo next. You know what I mean? Canelo, I already said to both. Canelo never really had much interest in fighting Benavidez like that. But he's never had interest in fighting Andrade, even at 154. You know what I mean? So if Andrade is to beat Benavidez, I think that should secure a fight with Canelo Alvarez. All right? All right, so move on with news. And this is going to be a short wave report video. A lot of it is going to be focused more on Charlo, Terrence Crawford, and stuff. Charlo said he's, went to social media and said that he's going to try to make history by fighting Canelo, going up to 168, fighting Canelo, which is already scheduled. We already know about that. But Charlo is saying that he's going to come back down to 154 and face Terrence Bud Crawford. Now, Charlo is already being stripped for the WBO, so he's not obligated anymore to fight Tim Tszyu. He's not obligated no more. He doesn't have the title anymore. Tim Tszyu is being elevated as a WBO. So one thing that I made, or one point that I was making in my last video, was that I don't know how this fight can't really be undisputed. But I also made a point that I doubt that Charlo would come back down to 154, whether he loses to Canelo or not, because I'm just making an assumption that it would be too much for him to come back down to 154 after going to 168, especially when you've talked about going up to 160 eventually. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't expect him to come back down to 154. I wouldn't want him to come back down to 154 and fight Bud if he's going to be drained. You know what I mean? But I don't know what other title obligations he's going to have at that point, because he has a fight, and then Bud may possibly fight Errol Spence in a rematch at 154 at the end of this year, because of the rematch clause. So if they are going to fight, it's probably going to be sometime next year, right? If Charlo wins or loses, can he still make 154? Can he still do it? Would it be smart to do it? Even if you can, would it be smart? We don't want any talks of anyone being drained. You know what I mean? Bud will be fine. We know that Bud is going to be fine because he wants to make the move up to 154. But will Charlo be good at 154? You know what I mean? Will he be his best coming back down? Especially if he loses or even gets dominated. You know what I mean? So even if you're holding those other 3 titles or whatever titles will still be in his place by that time. Like, again, I don't know what other title obligations he have right now. I know he had Tim Tszyu, but Tim Tszyu is now being elevated as a WBO champ. It would work for Bud, but would it work for Charlo? And even if he takes to social media now and says that, we don't know what's going to happen in that Canelo fight. And we don't know how he's going to feel after the Canelo fight. You know what I'm saying? What if this Canelo fight ends up being a very competitive fight? Or what if he actually does win? Do you win and come back down to 154 when you beat the top dude at 168? That doesn't seem realistic to me. It just doesn't. You know what I mean? This is what he's saying. But what I'm saying is he might change his mind. Because the outcome of that fight, you beat Canelo, you're going to be ranked. In some people's minds, they're going to have you all the way at the top from being Canelo, from jumping 2 divisions and beating Canelo. Whether you think Canelo's at his top or not, it's going to be a crazy win. It's going to be a crazy win. You know what I mean? So if you were to beat Canelo and go up 2 divisions and become undisputed in 2 different divisions by beating Canelo, that's going to be crazy. It's going to be a crazy win. You know, most people don't think you're going to win. But if you do win, or if the fight ends up being a very controversial win or loss for you, right? Because it could be a loss for you, but it could be a very competitive. It could be one of those fights where, like, man, Charlo almost won that, or Charlo got robbed. If it's going to be one of those kind of fights, are you going to be coming back down to fight at 154, to fight Bud? You might feel that way because everybody's talking about Bud and you and Errol right now. But are you going to feel that way after the fight? I still seriously, honestly doubt that Crawford, that Charlo comes back to 154 to fight Terrence Bud Crawford. All right, it would work for Bud because if Bud fights Errol in a rematch, or if Bud decides to wait for Charlo, if Errol pulls out of the not pulls out, but if he says I don't want to have the rematch, then Bud can fight Tim Tszyu for his title, and then fight Charlo. You know, or fight Charlo and then fight Tim Tszyu and become undisputed again if he is to win both fights. You know what I'm saying? So it works well for Bud, but does it work well for Jamel? And honestly, I don't think it does. You know what I mean? I really don't think so. I think for Charlo, win or lose to Canelo, you move back down because you're still too small at 168. You know what I'm saying? You move back down to 160 and do something there. You know what I mean? I just don't think the Bud fight is realistic at 154. But you never know. You never know. All right? I could be wrong. It's just the way I'm looking at it. You know what I mean? All right? And the last thing I wanted to talk about today is no real news. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the rewatch the other night because for the first time, and let me say this. You know, there's been a lot of fights where people went weeks talking about. All right, but last weekend or Saturday, the other night, Showtime showed the rewatch of the Crawford and Spence fight, and I have not watched the fight since the night that it was on when I was here. So I was able to watch it. You know, outside of some of the highlights that they showed on social media of the knockouts and stuff, or the knockdowns. I haven't watched the fight again. You know what I mean? I remember covering the fight here live, and I remember screaming, "Stop the fight," you know, for a certain amount of rounds. You know what I mean? Stop the fight. I was very confident after the second round and the way that, not just from the knockdown, but just the way that the fight was going. I was very confident, and if you guys were here, you remember, I was very confident that the fight was over in the second round. Bud showed me that he was stronger. Bud showed me he capitalized. He showed me everything that I needed to know once he came out as a southpaw fighting as serious as he was. And I've always said that. This man going into a fight Serious. Not switching, not starting out slow. If he were to go into a fight starting at 100 from the opening bell, how good would he be? And he showed me that early, and I knew the fight was going to be over by the second round. I knew it. Because it proved to me that Bud was stronger. He was more talented. All right. He was a harder puncher, which I said too. I said that to you guys. He's a harder puncher. I think Spence is a hard puncher, but Bud is a better knockout artist for sure. When I was watching the fight, I kind of wanted to rewatch it, listen to the commentary, and just see how Spence was. Because there's a lot of talk about Spence. Eyes were very glassy. He looked like he was high. He looked like he wasn't well. He looks like something was wrong with him. It looked like he was drained. I heard all of this stuff. And when I watched the fight, Errol Spence to me looked like Errol Spence. It's just that the difference is, and I'm not saying that every Errol fan's saying that, because honestly, at least a lot of the Errol fans that I've known and the Errol fans that has responded to my takes, or even some of the Errol supporters that's on social media and make content, they're not making excuses for them. Not all of them are. I've seen some, but not all of them are. But some of them are, the extremes. Errol looked like Errol to me. It just didn't work. You know what I mean? And again, it starts with the jab. There's a difference between the two. They use it differently. Errol has a good, powerful jab. Consistent, very active. The thing is, it's the same type of jab. Everything he does is the same. Whatever you're getting, and I've said this, whatever you're getting from Errol from round 1, you're getting from Errol in the 12th round. You know what I mean? You're getting the same thing. So you're doing the same jab at the same speed and the same pace over and over again. At some point, it's going to get countered. You know what I mean? And that's what happened with Bud. He started to counter his jab with his own jab, right? And he would follow him up with the combinations. And these are clean, well, perfectly timed. It was the timing. Whereas Bud, he's probing. You know what I mean? He's probing. He's changing the speed of it. He's changing the power of it. You know what I mean? He's changing the level of it. You know what I mean? He's doing more with that lead hand and just throwing the same jab over and over again. The problem with Errol is that it just becomes repetitive. And when you're fighting a master counterpuncher like Bud, it's going to be easy. It was end up being one of his easier fights because he's doing the same thing over and over again. And when Errol would try to do little things to dog him, there was a point where Errol turned into a dog and he stopped boxing and he said, I'm going to close the gap and I'm going to beat you up. And he did. All right. But Crawford would either tie up, like I said, he's either going to tie up and turn you. He's going to tie up, then push you off, and then hit you with a combination on his way out or on your way out. He's going to push you off. He's very strong. You guys kept talking size. I told you guys, stop talking size. It's not going to matter. Because if the guy is a strong fighter, and we seen him lifting guys up like Jeff Horn and just moving them at will. Yes, Errol is big and strong, all right? But Terrence Bud Crawford is strong and effective, and he knows how to use his strength, especially if he's coming from a wrestling background. How do you guys not notice Errol looked the same in the fight? And that's all I wanted to confirm, that Errol was doing what Errol normally does. It just was neutralized. And there were fighters that were showing hints of that, like Sean Porter, that many of you said that would get stopped by Errol. But they were even. They were on the same level. Even though Errol won the fight, it was clear to me after the fight that they were roughly around the same level. Whereas when And when Porter fought Terrence Crawford, yeah, the fight was competitive up into that last round, but there was a point where Bud said, "All right, no more games. I'm gonna stop this guy," and he did that, and he did the same with Errol, and he's done. Errol did not even push him. I still feel like we still have not seen the best of Bud Crawford. We still have not seen the best because Errol wasn't able to push that out of him. What Errol did was make the man fight seriously from jump because Errol was supposed to be that big of a threat. Going into the fight, the matchup itself, he was supposed to be. But in the fight, it was easy work. You know what I mean? So I did watch the rewatch. And like I said, we've seen plenty of fights. But I've seen channels doing a rewatch of the fight as if it was a Saturday night fight. That's how big of a deal that fight was. And I got all the confirmation I needed from Spence. What Spence was doing worked for a lot of fighters. Now, as far as the future and moving forward, a lot of people think he should retire now. And I understand both arguments. You know what I mean? I think that I don't think he should fight Bud again. Because I don't think the size at 154 in the division is going to matter. I know people feel that it might. It may, but I don't think so. You know, because Errol does what Errol does. You know what I mean? And everybody's still basing it off size and all of that stuff. No, I don't think he should fight Bud Crawford, but I don't think he should retire. I do want to see him fight other fighters as well. Now, the issue is some fighters are going to exploit some of those issues that we had seen from him, Earl, in previous fights. But not every fighter is Bud Crawford. You know what I mean? Not every fighter is Bud Crawford. Not every one of these fighters are able to do what Bud Crawford was able to do. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I don't want him to retire unless he feels like he should. If he doesn't have the will to go in and he says, you know what, I made my money, I'm good. I made my $25 million or whatever. I'm good. I'm out the game. I took a lot of punishment. I've been in an accident. I've had injuries and all this stuff. Then get out the game if he feels like he should. If he doesn't have the will to want to continue fighting, then, whatever. Or have a fight and you feel like even if you win, you don't feel like you're at your best, then retire. Some people say, retire now. He's done. He's cooked. But no, he's not done and he's cooked. He got beaten by a better fighter that many predicted to be better going into the fight. A lot of us seen it. And a lot of us feel that the fight didn't happen until the time that it did because it was a dangerous fight for Errol. It was a much dangerous fight for Errol years ago. You know what I mean? As soon as this guy moved up, it was dangerous for anybody at 147. So yeah, I don't think Bud beats everyone in the history of the sport now that he won that fight. It was a great, phenomenal win. I do think he is the best fighter in the world. I've thought that for some time now, but I don't think he beats everybody. You know what I mean? I've seen all the comparisons, everyone, not just Floyd, but other fighters. I think there are a lot of other welterweights, not just like just Sugar Rays and stuff. I think there are a lot of fighters that were harder, more difficult fights for Crawford than Spence. I think Spence's style did not match up very well against Terrence Crawford. But I think Spence does well against a lot of other great fighters, you know what I mean? But didn't match up well with Crawford. And that's the way I see it. You know what I mean? I think Crawford, him having the skills and the power as well is the key here. You know what I'm saying? He has the smarts, he's the craftiness or whatever, if that's really a word. He has all those tools. But he has the power to go with it. You know what I mean? He can fight any kind of fight. There are some fighters that's more defensive. There's more fighters that are more offensive. There's fighters that were even more athletic. I think one of the names that, I seen a post where How would Crawford do against Oscar De La Hoya's opponent, since he has a phenomenal resume of, all different guys from different eras? And I think Sugar Shane Mosley, undefeated at 147, the one that Oscar fought, would have been a very difficult fight for Terrence Crawford because of the athleticism. It's just the guy was super powerful and super fast, much faster than Crawford. It is right now. And Crawford is fast. But Shane Mosley was a beast at 135 and in the early 147 years when he was still extremely quick. You know what I mean? And I just think like these fights would have been more difficult fights. I know Shane lost to Vernon Forrest and stuff like that, but I think styles make fights. And I think Vernon Forrest is a guy that just knew how to win against him. He beat him in the amateurs too. He just knew how to beat him no matter what. But it doesn't take away for how the fight would go with Bud. I think a lot of these fights would have been more difficult fights for Bud Crawford. All right? You can't just based on, Vernon Forrest beat Shane twice. All right? But he couldn't beat Ricardo Mayorga. But Shane knocked out Ricardo Mayorga. You know what I mean? It really depends on what happens that night. And I'm just throwing one example. There's a lot of other fighters from all different eras that I think would have been more difficult for Terrence Crawford than Errol was that night. And we've seen it already because we've seen Bud Crawford have trouble against other fighters that weren't ranked as high. So I'm going to leave it at that. I keep saying this is my last video talking about Terrence Crawford. The rewatch made me open my eyes to things that, when I'm doing commentary, I'm doing it for y'all. But when I watch it for myself and there's no distractions, I'm picking up on things that I didn't pick up in the first time I watched it. And the jab of Crawford was phenomenal. But I also wanted to focus on Spence and seeing if he's doing what he normally does. And he was. It just wasn't as effective. It was neutralized. All that shit was shut down. All right. So anyway, that is my end of the video here, man. I'm going to get on out of here. Y'all have a good day. Please subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button. Share the video. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.